Hello everyone, back again with movie and tune recap. Today, I'm going to explain an Irish Gothic supernatural horror film from 2017, titled The Lodgers. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. In 1920 in rural Ireland, fraternal twins Rachel and Edward live alone in their family mansion, bound by strange rules. They must be in bed by midnight, and no strangers are allowed inside. Each night, the house is taken over by watery entities, and on the night before their 18th birthday, Rachel almost missed the midnight deadline because she spends too much time at a nearby lake. This angers Edward, who believes she is risking their lives, and Edward, who has never left the mansion, force Rachel to apologize to the watery entities beneath a hatch in the foyer by singing a nursery rhyme. Meanwhile, in the village, we meet Sean, a war veteran with a wooden leg, returning home to his mother, Maura, and the village men consider him a traitor. On her way to Maura's shop to buy supplies, Rachel witnesses a local troublemaker, Desi, harassing Maura's daughter, Kay, but they are interrupted when Rachel accidentally steps on a branch. After buying goods on credit, Maura gives Rachel a letter from the estate about their mansion, and outside the store, Desi confronts Rachel, but Sean steps in and beats Desi up after he makes an offensive remark. Sean, who is drawn to Rachel, follows her home, and while Rachel shares his interest, she insists he should not come to her house. Inside the mansion, Edward hears a noise and discovers a crow trapped in the chimney. He removes the bones of their mother's old lovebirds from a birdcage and places the crow inside. Meanwhile, Rachel reads the letter, which is from their family's solicitor, Birmingham, who plans to visit because their trust fund has run out, and he wants them to sell the estate. When Rachel tells Edward about this, he insists the watery entities will never allow it, and frustrated, Rachel says that living in isolation and never meeting anyone new is no way to live. She admits she can't continue like this, but Edward pleads with her, saying he will die if she leaves him. Rachel begins having regular visions of ghostly bodies rising from the lake, and hauntings inside the mansion, even seeing the entity taking the form of Edward. At the same time, she starts fantasizing about Sean while pleasuring herself. One night while in the bathtub, she has a particularly disturbing experience when an eel-like fish appears in the bathtub with her, even though it isn't yet midnight. The next day, Birmingham visits the mansion with Sean watching him from a distance, quietly following behind. When Birmingham arrives, Rachel greets him but refuses to let him inside. As they discuss the potential sale of the mansion, Rachel goes inside to retrieve a pearl necklace that belonged to her mother and gives it to Birmingham, hoping to temporarily placate him about their mounting debt. While walking Birmingham to the gate, she refuses his suggestion to sell a silver locket with her parents' pictures, protecting the sentimental item. On her way back, Rachel catches Sean spying on her and tells him to come back in the morning. During dinner, Rachel and Edward have an awkward conversation about how their connection to the watery entities in the house has intensified now that they have come of age. Rachel grows furious when she discovers that Edward has placed an eel-like fish in one of the dinner plates. The following day, Sean visits Rachel in the woods, and she takes him to the lake. She confides in him about the tragedy of her parents' suicides, which Edward witnessed, and ever since that day, Edward has never been the same. Rachel recalls her mother placing a silver locket around her neck before her death. She goes on to say that for 2 centuries, each generation of their family has seen the parents drown themselves in that lake, and Rachel then asks Sean if he will help her escape. She then persuades Sean to reveal his lost leg, and shortly, they grow closer, sharing a kiss and undressing each other. However, their intimate moment is abruptly interrupted when Rachel witnesses another vision of the ghostly bodies watching them. Rachel explains to Sean that her family built the mansion to hide their shame, but over time, that shame manifested into a supernatural force, punishing them for their past. Sean dismisses her story as a family legend, even as Rachel shares her deep fear of suffering the same fate as her mother and ancestors, and frustrated by his disbelief, Rachel coldly tells Sean to leave. Meanwhile, Birmingham angrily returns to the house, where he meets Edward and shows him the pearl necklace Rachel gave him, which has somehow transformed into a string of lovebird bones. Birmingham believes a substitution was done, but Edward eerily responds that they have summoned him back. He then allows Birmingham into the house. While exploring, Birmingham comes across the floorboard hatch and notices water inexplicably dripping upward. As he examines it, Edward sneaks up and repeatedly stabs him with a knife. Edward then opens the hatch and throws Birmingham's body inside, begging the entities for forgiveness for breaking the rules by letting a stranger enter the mansion. On his way home, Sean is ambushed by Desi and his gang, who brutally beat him in the woods, before leaving him to die. Sean later regains consciousness at home, where his mother Maura and Kay are tending to his injuries. Back at the mansion, Edward confronts Rachel when she returns, demanding to know who she was with. Rachel tells him she is leaving the next day, with or without him, refusing to fall victim to the same tragic fate as their parents. As the clock strikes midnight, the entities emerge from the floorboard hatch and begin tormenting Rachel in her room. Her haunting visions become more intense, and she dreams of kissing Sean underwater, both of them without clothes and suspended in midair. But the dream takes a darker turn and Sean transforms into Edward, before Rachel wakes up in terror, only to discover her room is drenched in water. Furious, Rachel blames Edward for the supernatural chaos, accusing him of causing it by letting Birmingham into the mansion, and in distress, she runs off into the village to find Sean. However, Maura angrily refused to let Rachel see him, blaming her for Sean's current condition. Frustrated, Rachel throws her silver locket on the floor as a form of payment for her debts, but Maura warns her daughter Kay not to touch it. Despite this, Kay follows Rachel into the woods and returns the locket to her. Feeling trapped, Rachel confessed to Kay that all of her ancestors were twins, and they isolated themselves in this place because of a family curse, and Rachel admits she had hoped Sean could help her break free from it. Suddenly, Desi and his cohort surround the two women, attempting to capture them. However, Rachel and Kay manage to escape and Rachel run back to the mansion, where Desi and his gang are unable to enter due to the house's strange powers. Rachel then goes to the lake, where she experiences a vision of Edward watching their parents' deaths, and discovers that their father actually drowned their mother before committing suicide himself. No! Rachel returns home to Edward, who is now fully possessed, and he is referring to himself as we. Rachel points out that the crow he has been caring for is not real, and it vanished before her eyes. Edward cryptically responds, "You'll see what we see," and expresses his twisted desire to impregnate her, claiming it will continue their family's immortal bloodline. To provoke him, Rachel lies, saying that she made herself a whore for Sean in an attempt to escape from Edward's control, and enraged by her words, Edward strikes Rachel unconscious. Believing her to be impure, Edward prepares to kill his sister, but when he realizes she is still a virgin, he changes his mind and instead prepares to sleep with her. However, Edward is interrupted when Sean arrives at the mansion and begins knocking frantically. Grabbing a knife, Edward answers the door and lets Sean inside the mansion, where he starts asking Sean bizarre questions, warning him that midnight is approaching. Suddenly, Edward attempts to stab Sean, but he dodges and the two engage in a violent fight. Their struggle leads them upstairs, where Edward accidentally stabs himself, and Sean ends up pinned to the ground with the knife through his hand. Meanwhile, Rachel wakes up and realizes that Edward has locked her in her room, and shortly after, the wounded Edward enters. As the clock strikes midnight, water begins to pour out from the floorboard hatch, and ghostly figures of Edward and Rachel's ancestors, all resembling the twins, rise from the water. As the entities start climbing the stairs, Rachel hears Sean's screams. She rushes to him and pulls the knife from his hand, causing the ghostly figures to disappear momentarily. However, when Rachel and Sean try to leave the house, they discover the front door is sealed shut. Realizing the entities won't let them go, Rachel steps back and is suddenly pulled into the watery hatch. Desperate to save Rachel, Sean dives into the water and finds himself in an upside-down mirror version of the mansion. He finds Rachel in a trance, but just as he approaches her, the ghostly figures drag him away, and Sean ultimately drowns. The ghosts then surround Rachel, urging her to join them, but she resists, swimming away and emerging in the lake outside the house. Rachel returns to the mansion and finds Edward dying from his stab wound. Weak and remorseful, Edward apologizes for Sean's death and asks if they can be together now. However, Rachel tells him no and explains that she only returned to say goodbye. She takes back her locket and kisses Edward on the forehead, promising him that their mother and father will come for him soon. Rachel then walks away from the mansion, leaving her brother to die, and as she approached the mansion's gate, the crow is seen watching her. The movie concludes with Rachel placing the locket on a tombstone as she leaves the cursed estate behind, finally free. Okay guys, that's all the recap about The Lodgers from 2017. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next video.